Before the greatest war of the ancient world began, its greatest warrior was offered a choice. A long, quiet life no one would remember, or a short one the world would never forget. He chose the short life. And for 10 years, an entire war bent around his moods. When he fought, Troy bled. When he refused, Greece burned. His body was invulnerable in every place but one. And yet what killed him was never really the heel. Hidden inside this story is a lesson we still get wrong today. What is it? Hi, this is What is the Lesson? The channel where we take one old story and pull out the one lesson we still get wrong today. Today's story, Achilles and the Trojan War. By the end, you'll know exactly which enemy the greatest warrior alive never learned to fight, and why we still lose to it today. Let's begin. Long before the first ship sailed for Troy, a prophecy hung over a newborn boy. His mother was Thetis, a goddess of the sea. His father was a mortal king. And the fates offered their son 2 lives. He could stay home and grow old in peace, a long life, a happy one, and a forgotten one. Or he could sail to a distant war and win glory no man had ever won, and die young, far from home. The old poets tell how she carried her infant to the river Styx, whose black waters made mortal flesh invulnerable. She plunged him beneath the surface, every inch of him except the heel she held him by. One small patch of mortal skin, no larger than a thumbprint. Remember it. The boy grew into the finest warrior the world had ever seen, swifter, stronger, and deadlier than any man alive. His name was Achilles, and when 1,000 ships gathered to sail against Troy, the prophecy came due. Glory or old age, never both. He chose glory. The war that summoned him began, as we have told before, with a theft. A prince of Troy, Paris, had carried off Helen, a Greek queen. And every king in Greece owed her marriage an army. The greatest force the ancient world had ever seen crossed the sea. And among all its kings, one man counted for more than any other. He brought only a small command. His myrmidons, drilled until they moved like the fingers of one hand. But wherever his black ships landed, resistance ended. Through 9 years of war, he stormed city after city allied to Troy. The poets count more than 20. Men who watched him fight said it was like watching fire move through dry grass. The Trojans learned his silhouette by heart. When that plumed helmet appeared on the plain, their battle lines bent inward like reeds before wind. The Greeks did not merely admire Achilles, they depended on him. And both sides of the wall knew it, which is why, in the war's 10th year, a single insult nearly destroyed everything. The army's supreme commander was Agamemnon, the most powerful of the Greek kings and the proudest. Forced to give up a prize of his own, Agamemnon demanded a replacement, and took it from Achilles. He took Briseis, a captive woman Achilles honored, and by every account had come to love. In that world, prizes of war were honor made visible. To seize them was to declare a man worthless. The greatest soldier alive stood before the assembled army, and was treated like a servant. Achilles' hand closed on his sword. For one heartbeat, the High King stood a blade's length from death. Then he chose a slower weapon. He drove the sword home and swore an oath. "I am finished fighting for you. Let the war go on without me," he said. "And when Hector is cutting your army down by the hundreds, remember this day." Then he walked to his tents beside the sea, sat down, and the best soldier in the world went silent. What followed was a demonstration nobody had wanted. The exact price of one man. Hector, Troy's greatest defender and its finest man, led his army out from behind the walls, farther than he had ever dared. Day by day, the Trojans drove the Greeks back across the plain, to the beach, to the ships that were their only way home. Then Hector's torches reached the fleet, and the first Greek ship went up in flames. Agamemnon swallowed his pride and sent envoys offering treasure beyond counting: gold, cities, the return of Briseis, anything. Achilles refused it all. The anger was no longer about Briseis. It had swallowed the war whole. He watched his own countrymen die from the doorway of his tent and told himself they had earned it. But there was one person his rage had never been able to keep out. Patroclus had grown up at his side, his dearest friend, the kindest man in the camp, and the one voice Achilles truly heard. Patroclus came to him in tears, not for himself, but for the men dying at the ships. "If you will not fight," he begged, "then lend me your armor. Let Troy believe you have returned. That alone may save the fleet." Achilles agreed, on one condition: drive them from the ships and no farther. Do not pursue them to the walls. Do not face Hector. So Patroclus buckled on the black and bronze armor of Achilles and rode out at the head of the Myrmidons. The sight alone broke the Trojan advance. The armor was worth an army, whoever stood inside it. And Patroclus, gentle Patroclus, learned what it felt like to be Achilles, with victory running ahead of him like a bow wave. He forgot the condition and chased the routed Trojans all the way to the walls of Troy. And beneath those walls, Hector turned to face him. The spear went through the borrowed breastplate. Patroclus died in Achilles' armor, and with his last breath, he promised his killer, "You will not outlive me long." They say the cry Achilles gave at the news was heard on the floor of the sea, where his mother sat. He poured ash over his golden hair. The men around him held his hands, afraid of what he might do to himself. The quarrel with Agamemnon, the pride he had let his countrymen die for, collapsed in a single instant into nothing at all. His armor was gone, stripped from Patroclus's body, worn now by Hector as a trophy. So his goddess mother brought him new armor by dawn, forged by the gods. A great shield carrying the whole living world hammered across its face. But she told him plainly what the fates had written. The moment Hector dies, your own death stands behind it. Achilles did not pause. "Then let me die," he said, "after him." The same rage that had held him out of the war now hurled him back into it. The fire had not changed, only its direction had. Achilles swept the Trojan army back across the plain, the way a flood sweeps a field. The gates of Troy opened to swallow the fleeing army, then closed. One man remained outside, Hector. He had killed Achilles' friend. He would not hide from what he had started. From the wall above, his old father Priam begged him to come inside. His mother begged. Troy itself seemed to beg. Hector stayed. Then he saw Achilles clearly, bronze burning like a rising star, and the bravest heart in Troy finally failed. He ran. 3 times around the walls of Troy ran the 2 fastest men of their age, hunter and hunted, while both armies watched in perfect silence. At last, Hector stopped and turned and offered terms. "Whoever falls today, let the winner return his body for burial." Achilles refused. "Lions do not make treaties with men," he said. "There is nothing between us to negotiate." The duel was brief. Achilles knew his own old armor, knew the one gap it left at the throat, and his spear found it. Dying, Hector asked one last time, "Give my body back to my father." What Achilles promised him instead, the poets could barely bring themselves to write. What he did next stained his glory for 3,000 years. He threaded leather straps through the fallen man's heels and lashed Troy's greatest defender to the back of his chariot. Then he whipped the horses and dragged Hector through the dust beneath the walls in full sight of his family. It did not end that day. Morning after morning, he dragged the body around his friend's tomb, as if dust could bury grief. It never did. The revenge was total, and it gave him nothing at all. Even his own gods looked down at their favorite warrior, the poets say, and were ashamed. Achilles had now defeated every enemy on the field, except the one that lived inside him. Then, on the 12th night, something came into the Greek camp that no army could have sent. An old man, alone and unarmed, walking past the sentries as if a god had laid sleep upon them. It was Priam, king of Troy. Hector's father had crossed an enemy camp in darkness, hauling a wagon load of ransom to beg for his son's body. He entered Achilles' shelter, knelt down, and did what no king had ever done before. He took the hands of the man who had killed his son, and he kissed them. "Think of your own father," Priam said. "An old man like me, far away, still watching the horizon for a son who is never coming home." And the rage that no army, no fire, and no ransom had been able to touch broke. Achilles wept. For his father who would wait like this, for Patroclus, and for the first time with his enemy rather than against him. The two men who had cost each other everything shared a meal in the lamplight. Grief on both sides of the table, and for one night, nothing else. Achilles gave back Hector's body, washed and wrapped by his own hands, and granted Troy 11 days of peace to mourn. It was the finest thing he ever did. It required no spear at all. The Iliad, the oldest war story we have, ends exactly there. Not on a victory, but on the night the angriest man alive finally let go. The prophecy had not forgotten him. Not long after, in the thick of battle before the gates of Troy, Achilles pressed forward, unstoppable as always. On the wall above stood Paris, the prince whose theft had started the war. Not a champion, an archer, Paris loosed. The old poets say a god guided the arrow. Perhaps by then it needed no guiding at all. It fell out of the bright sky and found the one place the Black River had never touched, the heel. The greatest warrior who ever lived was killed by a thumbprint of skin, and the least heroic prince in the story. The army that had followed him wept. The war he had carried for 10 years did not even pause. Because here is the strangest truth in the whole tale. Its greatest warrior could win every battle, and still not the war. He had broken Troy's finest defender and much of its hope. Yet the day he fell, the walls stood exactly as tall as the day he arrived. In the end, the city was not beaten down at all. It was tricked open by Odysseus and a hollow wooden horse. Strength opened the door. Cleverness walked through it. We have told that story already, the trick and the 10-year voyage the gods charged for it. Both are waiting for you at the end of this one. So, what is the lesson? Here it is in one line. The strongest man alive never mastered the one thing inside him. Achilles aimed his anger at his enemies all his life. Now count what it actually destroyed. His quarrel killed no Trojans. It killed Greeks, hundreds, dying within sight of his tent while he nursed the insult. His absence sent Patroclus onto the field in borrowed armor. Before any enemy touched Achilles, his rage had cost him the person he loved most, and revenge repaid him nothing. He killed Hector, dragged him morning after morning, and found no peace at the end of it. And notice the one moment this story shows him truly great. It is not a battle. It is a midnight meal with his enemy, the night he let the rage go. His strength won him every duel. Letting go won him the only peace he ever knew. 3,000 years later, the battlefields are smaller, but the fire is the same. The furious message you cannot unsend. The grudge that quietly eats your health, your sleep, your side of every table. Anger points outward. That is its oldest trick. But the account it drains is almost always your own. Achilles was invulnerable everywhere except one spot. And it was never really the heel. The strongest man alive never mastered the one thing inside him. Thanks for watching. If this story made you think, subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. And watch more of our stories right here. The wooden horse that finished what Achilles could not, and the 10-year voyage home that followed. See you in the next lesson.